I've had a few scary encounters in my life, but this one still creeps me out. In the early 90s, when I was 8, my family was visiting my uncle, who lived in the backwoods, Missouri. He lived on a lot of land, and the only other people who really even lived on the street were relatives, so no one else ever just happened to be out there. This meant no one ever locked their doors because random family members were always coming by. One night while we were there, my parents, my aunt and my uncle decided to go to a nearby town to go bowling. My brothers, who were 11 and 12, cousins and I stayed home. It was still daylight when the adults left, but it started raining pretty hard and got dark quickly. We used to play this game that was essentially hide and seek in the dark house, but we cleverly called it Vampire. There was a thin little mattress on the living room floor that some of the kids would sleep on at night, so the person would lie on the mattress and fold it over themselves like a coffin and count down to midnight. When they got to midnight, they went looking for you, and you tried to make it back to the coffin before you got caught. Because the house was in the country, it was pitch black at night. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Ben, my 11-year-old brother, was doing the normal countdown. I was hiding maybe 6 feet from him. As he's counting, there's a flash of lightning. I don't know if I was already looking at the living room window, or if the lightning made me look, but with the backlight of the lightning, I see a man with his face against the window. He had his hands on each side of his face as if he's trying to peer in, and looked exactly like the stereotypical creepster. I could feel every hair on my body standing on end. Immediately, I began trying to convince myself that I didn't see what I saw, but then Ben sternly whispered, "If anyone is hiding in here, stay still." I sort of croaked out, "I'm here," right as there was another flash of lightning. The man was still there, but was no longer trying to look in the window. Instead, he was now looking toward the front door. Ben and I immediately knew what was coming next. From where he was standing, Creepster was probably only 5 feet from the front door. Ben was the same distance, but there was a couch between him and the door. Ben leapt over the couch and locked the door right as man started trying the handle. At this point, I guess Ben decided that it was best to let the creepy man know that people were home and that we knew he was there, because he flipped on the porch light and then started turning on the lights in the house. This is going to sound weird, but I was too terrified to panic. I was relying completely on Ben to know and tell me what to do. He told me to go lock the other doors and was yelling for everyone else to come out and to lock all of the windows. Honestly, the next few minutes are hazy in my mind. I know that I locked the side door and then the sliding glass door on the back of the house. When we've talked about it over the years, some people remember us seeing him out the back door as well. I don't think I remember that. What I clearly recall is locking the sliding glass door and standing there frozen and hearing Ben, in a very calm but firm voice, say, "Close the curtain. Listen to me, okay? Close the curtain." So I did. We tried to call the police, but my aunt and uncle had a stupid party line and it wouldn't work, whether from the storm or from a neighbor leaving it off the hook or whatever. We also tried to summon help on my uncle's radio, but couldn't reach anyone. My uncle was a hunter, so he had a gun rack full of rifles in his room, but my older cousin was on an out-of-town hunting trip and took them with him. All we could find was a gun that looked like a real rifle. I vividly remember Ben putting me on phone duty and Scott, my older brother, while he stood watch at the little square window on the front door with the gun. Maybe 30 minutes later, Ben said, "He's back. He's coming up the driveway." The rest of us froze in fear, but Ben opened the front door and stepped out on the porch, pointed the gun, and said, "Get out of here right now." Then we heard our cousin Kyle, who lived down the road a bit, saying, "You know that's a gun, right?" Even though Kyle was only 15, I remember that we felt like we had been saved when he showed up. Kyle seemed really skeptical of our story, like we were playing a trick on him, even though we had no idea that he was coming. But he stayed with us until our parents came home. Honestly, I don't remember if we even told our parents what happened when they got home. There was definitely no police involvement, though. We just went on with our trip. My name is Mark, and I am 23 years old. I live in the woods, maybe 10 minutes away from the small town I lived by. And wanting to do something for my 24th birthday, I decided to rent a cabin for 6 days. I invited 5 friends to come with, and they happily said yes. The cabin I rented was a great deal. I packed food, a grill, some other supplies that we would need for the trip, and headed up north to the cabin with my friends. Once we got there, I saw the cabin. It was big with 7 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace. And I was happy about the deal that I got, and we went inside. The place was super cool, and we got to grilling and drinking and played games. As the first night came, something strange happened. It was about 1 a.m., and I couldn't sleep, so I got up and went downstairs to get a glass of water from the kitchen. And as I got back to my room, I heard something coming from outside. It sounded like a somewhat loud rustling through the trees. So I walked to the window and saw the trees shaking like something was walking through. I was confused but tried to go back to sleep with the sound gladly was fading away. In the morning I asked if anybody else heard it, but nobody else did. I just chalked it up to my overactive imagination and continued with our day. That afternoon we all went on a mini fishing trip for some more food. I was stupid and miscounted how much food we needed. So we only had food for 1 more day. So with beautiful weather outside, 3 of us hopped on the boat left near the shore, and the other 3 stayed on the shore and fished there. We were in the middle of the lake, and about an hour in, and hadn't caught anything. But suddenly I saw something strange on one side of the lake. I could only see an outline of the thing, and it maybe seemed 5 feet tall from where we were. But as soon as we saw it, it was gone back into the woods, and I asked if the other 2 people saw it, but they say they didn't, and said that I was imagining things. We kept fishing for maybe another half an hour, then headed back to the shore and meet back with the 3 other friends and cooked the fish we caught and watched the sunset. After that, we then went to bed. That night I woke up again, this time at 2:30 a.m. But I woke up to the rustling in the trees, this time much closer to the cabin. And once again I went to the window. But this time I only saw the thing's silhouette, because the only thing that barely lit it up was the moonlight. But I could see the almost distinct shape of it. It was 6 or 7 feet tall and was on all 4s and had what looked like antlers and a narrow face. But it only stayed for a couple of seconds looking around, but then dashing back into the woods. I didn't know what to do, so I just went back to bed because I was tired and couldn't comprehend what it was, and didn't even know if it was real or just my hallucination. In the morning I didn't bother asking my friends if they saw it, so I just acted like nothing happened and continued with the day. Nothing happened for the next 2 days, other than the rustling from the trees waking me up and some strange shadows. But other than that, nothing else happened the 6th. And last night around 2 a.m., I woke up to hear someone screaming from inside the house. I opened my door to try to see who screamed and what happened, as the other 4 people did, having the same idea to see one door that didn't open was one of the other friends' Brody's door. We all rush into the room to see him against the wall in the fetal position, staring at the window intently. Like if he looked away for 1 second, the window would burst into thousands of pieces. I shook him out of the trance he seemed to be stuck in. As soon as we got him out of it, he screamed again and then looked at us. I could see the horror in his eyes, and we asked what happened. But before he could answer, there was a shadow that covered all 3 of us, and we looked at the window, considering we were on the 2nd story, that the monster somehow climbed up the side of the cabin. It had antlers, a long face like a deer or dog, and then burst through the window with an animal-like screech, then running on all 4 at Brody. It closed the somewhat big distant within a couple of seconds, and ripped him apart, leaving him in a bloody, gory heap. I stood still for a moment trying to run, but my body not letting me. After a couple of seconds, I started to run out of the cabin, leaving Brody behind, and running down the stairs where the rest of my friends were already halfway out the door, and I was right behind them looking back to see if the thing was following us. But luckily it wasn't. It was still occupied with Brody. We didn't look back and ran to the car, hopping in and screeching out of the driveway and through the path back to the nearby town that we passed through on the way to the cabin before all the horror that occurred. After that day, when we got to the local town and we called the police, it was supposed to be a relaxing getaway, a chance for my friends and I to escape the city and enjoy some time together in the great outdoors. We found the perfect cabin on a secluded piece of property in the middle of the woods, and we couldn't wait to spend a weekend there. The The cabin was an old, dilapidated structure, but it had a certain charm to it. It was nestled deep in the woods, far away from civilization, and surrounded by tall trees that seemed to tower over us. It was the perfect place to get away from it all and just enjoy the peace and quiet of nature. But as soon as we arrived, strange things started happening. We heard strange noises in the night and saw shadows moving on the walls when there was no one there. We thought it was just our imaginations playing tricks on us. But as the days went on, the occurrences became more and more frequent and intense. At first, we shrugged it off as just being in an old, unfamiliar cabin. But soon, it became clear that something was very wrong. The shadows seemed to move with a will of their own, and we started to feel like we were being watched. We began to lock ourselves in our rooms at night, too scared to even move. It was on the third night when things took a turn for the worse. I was alone in the cabin, and I heard a knock on the door. I opened it to find no one there, but I saw fresh footprints in the snow leading away from the cabin. I immediately woke up my friends, but they found nothing when they looked outside. It was as if someone was playing a cruel joke on us. The next day, we found strange symbols carved into the trees surrounding the cabin. It was as if someone had been trying to send us a message, but we had no idea what it meant. We were terrified, and we knew that we had to leave. But as we were packing up our things, we discovered that our car wouldn't start. We were stranded, with no way to call for help. We searched the cabin and found a hidden room in the basement. Inside, we found a strange ritualistic altar covered in blood and human remains. We realized then that the cabin was built on an ancient burial ground, and that we had disturbed the spirits of the dead. We were trapped, with no way to escape, and the spirits were closing in. We knew that our only chance was to perform a ritual to appease the spirits and put them to rest. But as we were about to perform the ritual, we heard a knock on the door, and it was a hooded figure that appeared. He explained to us that he was the one who was living on the cabin before us, and had gone missing. He had to leave the cabin because he got sick and was unable to continue the ritual that he has been performing to keep the spirits of the dead away. Since he was not able to continue the ritual, the spirits were able to break free and were now after us. He suggested that we should leave the cabin as fast as we could. But we were not able to leave the cabin yet. We have to wait until the next day, as it was already too dark to go out, and the spirits were roaming around. We had no other choice but to spend the night in the cabin. We spent the night in the cabin, huddled together in the living room, too afraid to even move. We didn't sleep at all. We just waited for the dawn to come, hoping that the spirits would leave us, alone long enough for us to make our escape. But as the night went on, the occurrences became even more terrifying. We heard scratching on the walls and whispering voices in our ears. We were convinced that the spirits were trying to claim us for themselves. As morning finally came, we grabbed our things and prepared to leave. The hooded figure had warned us that we would have to perform a ritual to pass through the spirits safely. So, we gathered all the materials we could find and performed the ritual, hoping it would be enough to protect us. We opened the door and stepped out into the cold morning air. At first, everything seemed normal, but as we began to make our way down the path leading away from the cabin, we started to feel a sense of dread creeping over us. The spirits were all around us, watching and waiting. We were in a state of complete panic as we stumbled through the woods, trying to find our way to safety. We could hear the spirits all around us, closing in, and we knew that they were angry. They were furious that we had disturbed their resting place and were determined to make us pay. We were running as fast as we could, but we knew it wouldn't be enough. The spirits were gaining on us, and we could feel their cold breath on our necks. We were so close to the main road, but it felt like it was miles away. Just as we were about to give up hope, we saw a car in the distance. We ran towards it, waving our arms and yelling for help. We never spoke of that cabin again, but the memory of it still haunts us to this day. We all have had nightmares of the cabin and the spirits, and we can't shake the feeling.